Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
We're going to continue to talk some more Milwaukee Brewers as we kind of put a bow on this 2025 season. And joining us right now from 97.3 The Fan in Milwaukee, Brewers reporter and host Hunter Baumgardt. Hunter, it's good to see you, man. Big thanks for joining us here this morning, and welcome to the program.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Dan. Good to be with you.
Yeah. So, one question we've been kind of throwing out there for listeners this morning is how do you assess this 2025 season? I know some fans out there saying, is it a failure because they didn't go to the World Series because they had the best record in Major League Baseball, the top seed? Can't term it a failure because of that stuff. How do you view the 2025 Brewer season?
Yeah, I think it is. I don't think it's a failure. I think it's probably a success. If we're going success or failure, I would lean towards the success route because of what you had throughout the season, right? A sample size of 162 games is way more than a sample size of 9 games that is the postseason. So you had 162 games where the Brewers were the best team in baseball with 97 wins. Then you go to the postseason, you have a 9-game, Brewers played 9 games in the postseason. Were they the best? Absolutely not, especially in the NLCS. But that, I think overall you could say that, look, the Brewers for a longer period of time were the best team in baseball. And it's not just about the record. It's not just about 97 wins. It's about the moments, I think, that the Brewers provided for fans this year. It felt like every other week there was something new to celebrate, from Mizorowski's debut to him matching up with Skeens to Woodruff coming back in Miami to Woodruff's home debut, Miz against Kershaw, Miz to the All-Star game, walk-off against the Mets, the 11-game winning streak, the 14-game winning streak, the 8-game winning streak in late May. Like, there's so many different moments, and it all, I think, the top of the mountain for the 2025 season was beating the Cubs in the NLDS. So I think all of those moments absolutely lead up to a successful season and makes you really excited about the future of Brewers baseball.
So you mentioned, beating the Cubs in that. Do you get the sense that this was a team that after that series, obviously with the Council, division rival, a lot of emotion in that, did that carry over a little bit to the Dodgers series, or were the Dodgers just this huge powerhouse that the Brewers were going to have no shot against them?
I think a little bit of both. I think if they play maybe a different team, yeah, maybe it is a little different against the Dodgers. Who knows? I mean, Pat Murphy referenced that it was an emotional series against the Cubs multiple times. So if it wasn't, he wouldn't have, referenced that as many times as he did. If it didn't mean more to those players and that staff and everything, he wouldn't have said that. So I think not only obviously as fans we felt it, but also when you look at the team, I was kind of saying going into that game 5, it felt like the weight of the world was on that game. Like the world is going to be determined by that game 5. Like there was just so much that had led up to it the last 2 years. And like you mentioned, the Council thing and the rivalry between the two teams, Brewers winning back-to-back division titles, but not getting a playoff series win since 2018. It was all culminating in that game 5 moment. And for the Brewers to win that, I think, was just an absolute huge sigh of relief. And then, yeah, you go against the Dodgers, and then there are millions and millions and millions, and the pitchers were just, unhittable in a lot of sense. Now, could you blame the Brewers' offense a little bit in that series? Yeah, absolutely. And there's blame to go around there as well. However, if those Dodgers pitchers are on with the lineup that they have, it's going to be hard for any team in baseball. And, I'm thinking we'll see something similar with the Blue Jays here in the World Series. I'd be surprised if we don't. So, yeah, I think it is kind of a little bit of both there.
Hunter, you mentioned, you're optimistic, you're excited for the future here for this Brewers team. Obviously, a lot of young guys and such, but what do you do with Freddie Peralta? He's got the 1 year left on his deal. If you look back at the last couple of years, I mean, they traded Corbin with a year left. They traded Devin Williams with a year left. He's coming off of a career year. I don't know. I guess I don't have a sense of what Matt Arnold or the Brewers are going to do here, because I would imagine that they could get a lot in return for Freddie Peralta. But at the same time, you're coming off of a 97-win season. So what would you do in this situation?
Boy, it's right. It's do you keep him like you did Willy Adames and let him go, or do you trade him like a Devin Williams or a Corbin Burns, like you mentioned? It's like there's the two ways. I mean, with how number one, they are deep at the starting pitching spot. But we also saw throughout this season how quickly that can be depleted through injury. So you can never have enough starting pitching. You can never have enough pitching in general. But you do see all those guys that were in there, the Chad Patricks, obviously Mizorowski, Logan Henderson, Robert Gasser. I mean, the list goes on and on of guys. Does Woodruff come back? We'll see. Quintana, we'll see, right? So there's some holes there for sure. If it were up to Hunter, I would say keep him, because this team, you get 97 wins and you get to the NLCS and you're knocking on the door of a World Series. And so if that's the case, why not try for one more year? Plus, this whole work stoppage thing in 2027 could be real. And if they all of a sudden, go into a salary cap type situation, then maybe the Brewers they would probably change their philosophy a little bit, and they have to. Everybody would, in a way. And so maybe you just say, we'll see what happens then. Let's just go one more year with Freddie. Obviously, there's the report that they're listening to offers. Of course, they're going to listen to offers. It'd be silly for them not to. If a team calls them up and has a great offer for them, okay, you consider it. But I have a feeling it's tough, because I could go either way on this because of what we've seen in the past. And Devin Williams turned into, obviously Nestor Cortez was injured most of his time here, but you got your third baseman, and clearly he's your third baseman after what Durbin did since being called up in mid to late April. So that's what can turn you in, Freddie Peralta can turn into, but I lean towards them keeping him at least to start the year.
He's Hunter Baumgardt. Baumgardt joining us here, Brewers reporter, host for the game in Milwaukee. If that's not the biggest question, is the second biggest question what they do with Joey Ortiz or the shortstop spots? You got Cooper Pratt potentially at AAA, or, I know they thought about maybe putting Terang there in spring training and such. You look at the offensive production from Joey Ortiz. Nobody's arguing what he gives you defensively, but can they go another season with what he brings to the table offensively?
Yeah, I think you have to look at it, unfortunately, because in this organization, I wouldn't be shocked if Ortiz is your starting shortstop next year either, because this organization is built on pitching and defense. So that's what they prioritize. Clearly, that's why Ortiz started every single game in the postseason. Like they prioritize that, to maybe their own fault a little bit in the NLCS when they had to, provide some sort of spark. Maybe Monasterio could have gotten more playing time or what have you, but I think you have to consider it with what Joey did at the plate. Like you said, it's so hard because his defense was better than Adames. Obviously, his offense was way lower than Adames. So it's kind of a give and a take there. And can you, like you did this year, make up for it in all the other spots of the lineup? Because basically that's what you did. So, and there were times that Joey got hot or whatnot, but obviously most of the season he was struggling. So can you make up for it in other spots? It's possible that you can, but I think in the offseason, you have to consider it. You have to consider options, whether it be in free agency, whether it be via trade, to see if you can get a guy who maybe you sacrifice a little defense, but significantly better offensively. I don't know who that is or what that looks like, but I think you have to look at it. As much as I kind of hurts me to say it, because Joey's so good at shortstop, and I think we take it for granted a little bit. Same with maybe even Terang or other guys, because it looks routine, but it's not the type of plays he was making. But I think you got to consider it in the offseason.
Hunter, if there was a guy that was in line to maybe get a contract extension this offseason from the Brewers, you got a Sal Frelick, you got a Bryce Terang, maybe even a Contreras. I know they've got, options maybe waiting in the minors and such. But if there was a guy that you would give that first contract to, who would it be?
It's hard not to say Bryce Terang because of the power that he showed this year, and a lot of people didn't necessarily think that he had that power in him. I mean, it's kind of surprising, but he did, and he kind of went on that surge. Obviously, Platinum Glove winner. He's a finalist for Gold Glove again this year. I think Sal's, like you said, Sal's up for it. I would love for them to sign Contreras long term. I'd have to look back at that contract one more time and see how long that is, but I don't know. I mean, you could also, I know they really like Jefferson Caro, who's coming up through the system. Now, Contreras is a really good catcher, but do you play out the strings, so to speak, and bank on him kind of going down after that? He's been Contreras has been amazing. The way he's battled through injuries the last couple of years, especially this year. He had a finger injury throughout the entire season. Now, did it get better some points and he performed better? Yes. But other time, and then he's playing in the playoffs after getting hit with that check swing in St. Louis. Like he was I mean, you just love to have a guy like that on your team. So if there was to be a guy who would say, I want him, for as long as we can get him on the Brewers, probably William Contreras, but I just don't know how realistic or what he's going to demand. And then also catchers, that's like I said, you get beat up in that position. So
Yeah.
how long, after this contract, is he going to be productive? That's a question the Brewers have to ask themselves.
Maybe takes a page out of his brother's notebook and goes to first base later on in his career,
Right?
possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. Especially if he's still hitting. Absolutely.
Right. Exactly. Okay. So you follow the team, you cover the team. We've talked a lot about Pat Murphy, up here in Eau Claire. You've talked to him. You've been around him. What we hear, what we see, what we read, is he like that in person too from your interactions?
100%. He is exactly what you see in the press conference. Like the bring the kids to the table before every postseason press conference. He asked, if he didn't know somebody in the room, which was usually like half the room because more reporters come for the postseason. So it was like, he'd go to even all the cameramen in the back. It's what's your name? Where are you from? And so yeah, he is, I think, player or coach, the most fun I've had covering anybody, because he answers you honestly. Of course, is he going to give away, everything? No. And there's times where he'll have a shorter answer or not give you, but that's any coach, any manager, any play, like anybody's not going to give you totally everything. But there's just such a difference between him and you look at whether it's other coaches in other sports, whatever it happens to be. He just genuinely, and I actually think he genuinely likes talking to the media, which is very rare. Like, we know, like, it's very rare for coaches to want to talk to the media. But if it was all an act, we totally would have known by now. It's 2 full years. And it's not, because he says multiple times, we'll be in his office before a game and he'll be like, oh, we're done? Man, I kind of want to go longer. Like, and then somebody will be like, well, I got one more question. He's like, all right, let's do one more question. Like and that stuff wouldn't happen with, most coaches, and it just wouldn't happen if he wasn't genuine about it. So I love how genuine he is. He loves just talking baseball with you. I feel like I've learned so much about baseball over the last 2 years covering him. So what you see on TV, what you see online, that is 100% the Pat Murphy in person.
Hunter, last question for you before we let you go. So if there's any Brewers fans, still a little bit down from the season, not advancing to the World Series, what would you tell those fans looking ahead to next year to maybe give them a little bit of optimism?
Yeah, I think so. There are 26 guys on that postseason roster, and 25 of them are under control next year. I mean, this is a team that is set up so well for the future. And you look around that team, you look around, you from the young guys, right? What gives me hope, especially going into next year and the years to come, is think of how many guys were playing in their very first road playoff games this season, almost the entire starting lineup, because in 2023, they were home. That was like Sal Frelick, Bryce Durant, those guys' first playoff experience. Okay. Then they had 2024 also at home. So you think about, Durbin at third, Ortiz at short, Turang at second, Vaughn at first, Churio, Frelick, like all those guys that was their first road playoff games. And if you want to say, well, they didn't play well in LA or they didn't play well in Chicago, maybe that was a reason for it, right? They're getting kind of their feet wet on the road in the postseason, which is a completely different animal than playing at home. So you have that. You also had another building block this year, that finally getting over the hump of winning a playoff series. So 97 wins. It's hard to have a better regular season than what they did. And then it's all about the postseason. And I think they learned a ton in the postseason this year. Number one okay, this is how you win a playoff series. This is how it's like on the road. But also, maybe you have to kind of save some of the emotion, no matter who you're playing, whether it's the Cubs or whoever, to still be ready to rock and roll for that Dodgers series as well, right? So I think that this young team learned a ton this year. Probably Pat Murphy as a manager learned a lot, even Matt Arnold, the guys in the front office. And not only is this the talent set up for the future on the field, but I think this organization learned a ton and can build off what they did, because it was a magical season in many respects, and the expectations are going to be pretty high next year, which is going to be really fun.
Absolutely. Hunter Baumgardt, Baumgardt. Apologies, I don't know why. I want to call you
You're good.
Baumgartner. I want to call you Baumgartner for some reason.
Everybody does. It's totally fine. That's the natural way.
Follow him on X at Hunter Baumgardt, Brewers reporter, host at The Game, 97.3 The Game at Milwaukee. Dude, appreciate you hopping on this morning. We got to do this more again in the future, too. So big thanks for taking some time. Good stuff. Loved following all your stuff all season long in your career, too. So keep it up. You're doing some awesome stuff. So, again, big thanks for hopping on with us this morning.
Absolutely. Appreciate you, Dan. And anytime, absolutely. Would love to hop on.
Awesome. Thanks, Hunter. We'll chat with you again soon, okay?
Thanks.